Talk Show.
Recorded live.
Welcome to the Tuesday Night's Triumph Over Targeting podcast. I'm your moderator, Ella. And tonight we have a very interesting guest again. He was recommended by Mike Mason, and he's a longtime TI. First off, if you were new to the call, please stay on, and we will get you some support, some additional Talk Show podcast numbers, and some helpful links and websites. This is a solution and educational-based podcast, but the views and opinions of my guests are not necessarily my own personal views and opinions. My goal is that everyone can obtain something out of tonight, especially a feeling of empowerment. If you have any suggestions, comments, questions, especially if you are in need of additional support, please don't hesitate to email me at tiangel2016@gmail.com. Again, that's tiangel2016@gmail.com. So, Robert, I want to say thank you for coming on and being willing to share your testimony and your story.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Okay. You were spoken of very highly by a few people. So, again, I'm just happy that you were able to come. Can you give a little bit of your background, maybe, if you'd like to, like where you grew up and, what your career interest has been and different things like that, if you want to share that before we get into the actual targeting?
Sure. I'm a mechanical engineer. I was born in Topeka, Kansas, and I'm an elderly gentleman. I've been in this business. I call it a rotten business, if you will, for about 30 years. So there isn't much that I haven't been through, or probably most individuals I've probably heard about. I love sports. I'm a veteran in Special Ops Operations, United States Army, retired, and so I'm familiar with directed energy weapons with the Department of Defense, as well as the abused, targeted individuals, such as I think is online here. I am one myself, and I have been one for years. And I'm willing to share my story if I can help. There isn't much that I haven't been through with these issues. Some TIs may disagree with my targeting situation because mine happen to be perpetrators of organized crime connections, and I can explain that. I don't want to do all the talking. I don't know how you conduct your shows, but I would be glad to explain it all and what has happened to me and how it happened. And in my case, they are identified, and I can mention who it is, as well as I do have a website report that I think most folks have been on. I don't know if you want me to identify it on the air or not.
Please do. We will go, because we have plenty of time, so we can go to an in-depth discussion about you and your targeting and maybe some of the solutions and what you do to kind of get through this. And I'd love to hear about your website. So we can go in any order that you want. If you want to get into your website, that's good. But maybe we should talk about, I'd like to hear a little bit more about your military involvement. And you obviously already know about these directed energy weapons. So what did you know about them while you were in the military?
Basically, that they are basically used for our protection, not against it. They aren't. A lot of people have the misconception that the Department of Defense uses them against innocent citizens, and that has not been my experience at all. It's mainly used for intended to be used for our securities, and the United States Department of Defense, and as well as the agencies such as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, whom I personally have stayed in contact with for years. They know me personally, and I've had several personal meetings with them, as well as phone conversation follow-ups. However, I don't agree with them, as Dr. Robert Duncan and a lot of others do not either, and that's why we're all trying to help, because they mainly, they don't want to get involved and involve themselves and wrongly or also, I guess, conduct information to us that they claim to be, against the different regulations and different, different issues as far as security issues. Mainly, it enters into very high securities on behalf of, the various securities of our country. And so that's the main reason they claim. Although I don't think that that's obviously it isn't correct to leave individuals out here, innocent citizens that are abused by directed energy frequency abuse. I don't understand it, and it's something that I think that we're just all trying to expose a little bit. A lot more than we're most all of us are having luck. Although we're in the most awareness that we've been in in our history, so it is getting there. It's just a matter of a little more time and a little bit more publications. That's the purpose of my website report that I've been working on for years, and I think that proper publications about this for teaching people universally what this has done to people, what it is doing lawlessly, is the best course of action, and it also exposes the agencies for not assisting us, and therefore I think they're coming around a little bit more to the positive, and hopefully will be assisting us in the future. Hopefully, here close by. I know that a lot of our cases are monitored by them. You may not know it, but that is occurring. So they're trying, I think, the best that they can, but they have a lot of people that are undercover. They have a lot of issues at stake, and so it's a very hard topic to really try to reason with people on their behalf. So I don't want to try to sound like I'm doing that either, because I have a high disagreement with the way that hundreds of people are left out here that are victims and that are suffering every day and night, and also involving their families. So I'm working very hard on everybody's behalf also, and my own case, there hasn't anything I don't think I haven't been through, and it's kind of a living hell, if you will, and there's a lot of abuse going on that I try to deal with, typical of others, and so we're just all doing the best that we can.
Well, can we start back, like when you first got targeted and how you? I think that's a good place to start. What were you doing, and what year was it, and what did you notice that you realized something was going on initially?
Well, it was very confusing, and it was clear back in the late 1980s to 1991, and it started with some issues that will probably be extremely confusing because the organizations that were involved are not more known as biker gangs, and in fact they are international organized crime, and I would think that people mainly think of them as biker clubs, but they're international. They're very strong with a lot of numbers of people, and a lot of them, a great percentage, do not even wear biker attire. Citizens don't realize that. They're a very secretive organization. They call them 1%ers. The two groups involved with me are known as the Hells Angels, and also the Mongols MC. And I think the prior one mentioned is probably the more one of the stronger in the world that is obviously known, and federal authorities are involved with these folks. So wherever basically they are operating, you're going to have federal authorities there also, in the midst somewhere, because there are just a number of crimes that they're associated with. Now, I was not I was not a member, or I wasn't involved with them whatsoever. It was a situation where I moved, accepted an engineering position in Long Beach, California, and I arrived there in the late 80s, and starting in 1991, I fell into a superior court process that was a very long situation indeed, and that's where I learned that, just prior to that, I had been targeted by these groups. I like to say more connections of these groups that are interrelated with these groups. And it was just some confusion that they didn't know who I was. And the last thing in the world, though, I want people to think is I have, any type of membership or any type of, dealings with these people. They just knew me. And I was at business establishments where they were also. That's basically how it happened, and maybe some of the confusion. They can be very paranoid people due to their criminal business. So I think I didn't maybe appear to them as them. They didn't know me, and there weren't any identifications, at that time that were worn, no what they call colors or, significations on clothing or anything like that until much later on. And so the superior court process was a long process. Prior to it, I was targeted, and I didn't have any, like most targeted individuals, they do not have any idea, what it is. They just know that if something is hitting them that doesn't feel normal. In some cases, it doesn't look normal, because you can have, an audible as well as a visual field, and I happen to have both at the time, and it was very very confusing in trying to figure out what was happening. And so what basically happens in those cases, and it did myself, is you go into a self protection, and especially I was trained in the military, and then trying to protect my family is basically how I wound up in the court process. And from there on, it just went on and on. As once they usually hook into you with this type of targeting, which is an electromagnetic type of ionosphere type of arrangement, and it can be like you can think of it as sort of a satellite tracking system. That's what they had on me. I would notice that it confused me further in the beginning, because I would notice it wherever I went, on business trips, even out of state and so forth. And
how did you come to discover that it was satellites?
Well, just by the nature of traveling. I mean, it wasn't a local situation. It was wherever I went, and, including out of state.
And how did you know definitively that it was the Hells Angels, or this group of criminals?
Well, it was very obvious in the beginning. As I said, they weren't wearing identifications because they didn't know who I was, and at the time there was a criminal situation going on with the two groups. They're actually rivals, and what happened is that they were both. I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and what happened? They were in a situation, a territorial situation dispute, called North versus South, and so one being North and the other group being South in their dealings. And so Long Beach was kind of a confusing area on who was doing marketing on what type of product lines and what type of other issues in their business. So that's how they were both involved. Now later on, they were wearing identifications, and there were specific identifications, but not in the very beginning.
And what was Long Beach like during that time? Was it a big bike community? What was the economy? And because I used to live in California, so I'm curious what Long Beach was actually like. I can't think of the right word. When all this was occurring. Because, Long Beach, I can remember being really rough at one point, and then it kind of got cleaned up and had a different demographic moved in. So I'm just curious, because it may be prior to even me before I even moved to California. So I'm just curious of the environment and what it was like when you were living in Long Beach and experiencing this.
Well, that's a very good question because it was on the 60-minute program, probably the best way to answer it and get right to the point. There were investigations by the well-known 60-minute program, and they were the worst police department in the United States. So there were a lot of payoffs going on. There were a lot of illegal dealings. A lot of these folks were taking over various business establishments, which mainly included restaurants and as well as bars and restaurants, or a combination of both. Most had entertainment, food, serving, as well as alcohol and pool tables and things of that nature. They were clean places. They didn't look, they weren't identified really to innocent people coming in as anybody being an organized crime. In the beginning, it would be happening later on when the exposure was more in tune and or the territory disputes were more so ironed out as who was going to handle what in what vicinities and what areas, what geographic areas and so forth. And there were a lot of bars. There was a lot of crime. There was also a big, you can think of it as a great big, huge conglomerate carnival type thing, the Long Beach Pike, which is no longer there, and surrounding that whole area, due to the fact that it was a roller coasters and a lot of rides and things of that nature going on. They had a lot of bars and businesses surrounding that, where people would come from all over the place to, for different businesses and different meetings. So it was a pretty rough area and kind of a hangout for a lot of people also.
Yeah, and then as time went on, the socioeconomic of Long Beach kind of changed, as we know. Anything south, like Venice Beach and all those places have kind of evolved as LA is kind of sprawled. So that's just interesting. I was curious how it was during this time. And so what exactly happened? Was it gang stalking or contracted stalking, or was it just straight directed energy weapons? Because you did mention seeing them. So I'm just curious. What was the first initial stage of targeting, and when did it work into the V2K aspect?
Well, that's a good question also, because it came in stages. What I noticed in the very beginning, and that's mainly looking back on it, as I noticed some things waking up at night in my home. I was right in the middle. By the way, what happened is that I moved into a real nice house, and it was my wife and I at the time, and also my daughter, my younger daughter, and we moved into a very nice area, we thought, and although it was surrounded by all of these things going on too, and that's what kind of started the problem. I didn't really have to do anything at the time. I rode a motorcycle myself at times and had it was just more or less a personal hobby, and I came from San Diego. Originally I had property in Colorado, and I came out to San Diego and accepted a position with an engineering company in San Diego, and then I had an offer with another engineering company in Long Beach, who told me that had my responsibilities offer as mainly the Long Beach vicinity area. So they obviously told me that my best bet would be to move to Long Beach, and I noticed that in doing business there and just minding my own business the first couple of years that I was there. Obviously, I would go being a lot younger at that time, and later on separated and living alone, I would go occasionally for a beer, play a game of pool, and that's where I met these people. And again, no problems. I never had any problems I don't give anybody any problems anyway, and I didn't get any from them either. Some of them I came to know, I wouldn't say well, but I knew, a few of them. They knew who I was. I think there was a trust, that from a few of them to me, and then there was also a lot of distrust, just in the fact that they are not the sort of folks that will, gain trust in anybody real quick. And so this was a period of several months. And then to get back into what I noticed at night, just out of nowhere, with a little bit of history that I just informed you folks, is that I would wake up at night in my bedroom, of course, in my home, and I would raise, just slightly conscious. I thought it would be normal wake up, and I noticed kind of a movement, or it would be both a visual field, and also there was an audible, there was an audible situation going on, and like a buzzing type of thing that was not normal tinnitus. It was, and neither was the visual field. And what I did, what we do in our conscious or sometimes a subconscious mind is when we run across something like that we don't have any clue what it is, or we're not expecting anything, or we don't have any reason to be. And I had no record whatsoever. I lived a clean life. I was probably had the armory sorts to me at the time also, but I didn't. It was more in joking and trying to gain friendship and so forth, and playing pool or listening to music, or something that area, not in a troublesome area. And so I didn't have anything necessarily to be paranoid about or worried about. And I would wake up noticing this visual orientation type of field, and maybe an audible sometimes, not necessarily both at the same time. And sometimes it was both at the same time, or just one or the other.
And Can I interrupt? I'm sorry to
Sure.
interrupt you. I don't want you to lose your train of thought. But when you say visual, what were you seeing?
Well, it's hard to explain, and to this day I have a hard time answering that question, because what we do, I think, in this business is we try to, we want to. We're normal people, and we want to appear that way. But targeting by these designs are not intended for us to gain help through normal channels. And so what happens is that these there are certain encryptions, and I'm sure that most of you listening know what encryptions are. There are specific designs that are encrypted, that meaning that they are not. They're not supposed to be explained. So the explanation is very hard. It can be a visual, such as a highlight of a person, and or you will see unexplained movement, which I did. It would be, and some of this is things that they want to see how the targeted victim responds to it, as to maybe who they are or what their response is going to be. They're trying to find out who this individual is. And
one thing I wanted to ask you, visuals, was it typically in low light? Because I'm trying to find a path.
That's a good question also, and the answer would be yes. It would be typically at low light, because your electromagnetic field with the when that hosts you in that manner, it better shows up in low light. It very much does. If you have in the evening or at night with the moon shining and so forth, and that type of a light level, it can be very much so active that it can be during a bright daytime. That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sorry I interrupted you, so if you want to go back to what you were saying.
Oh, that's okay. I want you to ask questions because I have, so much, involved with this stuff that it's easy for me to, keep going on the subject, so please do.
Okay, I like a lot of details, so hopefully I won't interrupt too much. So when you first discovered this, what were you thinking exactly, and did you tell anybody? Did you tell your wife?
No, and I didn't, and I because I didn't know, and I didn't know, what really was taking place, and I didn't until later on, and then she, and I guess this is what kind of, helped me in a lot of ways because I want to, even though I have not had any mental issues or anything of the sort, I did well in the military. I came back with 3 consecutive terms overseas with commendations for services performed, and I'm not known to have, any misdealings with anybody. I'm a strong individual, and I didn't get messed with by them physically or anything of that nature. They knew I could take care of myself, and so they were basically testing me to find out if I was. I don't know, possibly the way that I carried myself, from what I understand from later communications and investigations that were done via the court system and by state-appointed private investigation agencies, that they may have thought, some of them may have thought that I was an undercover agent, federal agent or something in that area. So, but they weren't sure. And so again, they're very paranoid. They're very dangerous people, and I didn't know any of these things at the time. I knew nothing about them, but that is case in point, and it's very, very dangerous. People and very dangerous involvement that they are involved in their business transactions. And this literally is universal. It's all over it's international, and they have thousands of people unknowing to regular citizens that see these folks as just biker gangs. It is not true at all.
My personal experience is that they were dangerous, and I know that some of the really, really big bands, like the huge ones, would hire them for security and some really shady type of security. So, yeah, I understand they were dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. And then at the same time, there were some parts of these folks that I actually got along with a couple of them, and I didn't like what was occurring later on, and it put me in a spot when I found out. Kind of an understatement when I found out what was going on, and I didn't know later on which way to turn, and it didn't take me long to figure out that this was some sort of directed energy. And I started. We don't have any place to go, especially at that time. This was before there were any writings available to citizens about these type of systems, and it was also a time when the internet was just developing. So we have a maze of information now, and where I had none, and so. It was a very, very hard thing to learn what was happening, and that's part of my worry right now, as it is with some of our professional people like Mr. Benny, Mr. Weed, that are come over on our side to help us because they know obviously the technicals of these systems a lot better than any of us, and they don't agree with the way that federal agencies, getting back when I first introduced myself here online, the way that federal agencies are handling these cases. So they're helping us now, and we've had the World Wide Web to get out several websites like my own, similar to my own, and a lot of great things are going on. So there's a lot of hope for people that in our field now that have lost hope, as I know a lot of us have. And there's been death, there's been injuries. It's not good for your health. I could go on and on about it. I've been there. I've done it. Believe me. And I've been in the hospital with certain conditions. Later on, I kind of went after a few of these folks because of what they did. And
Were you for your family's safety?
For my family's safety, that's correct.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to even to talk about. I haven't been on any of your shows, and I was pretty well at one time. I still do have a page on Facebook, and I know most of the folks, but I stopped doing that because it was I found that there were so many infiltrations. And so many victims, targeted individuals that possibly had other identities, or they were, they had other issues, and from there were a lot of arguments, and there were a lot of also some people that were not too kosher that were just kind of trolling and so to make a long story short, without getting into all these negatives, I quit going on Facebook for a long time, and I left my page up, and I occasionally go on there, and I'll accept. I won't turn down trying to help anybody. So even though it's gotten into more trouble, I think, than sometimes it's worth, because again, some of the unfortunately. I don't know how to phrase this, authenticated targeted individuals, the targeted individuals that are actually targeted by directed energy, / frequency weapons or frequency systems, whatever you wish to call them. It's an energy field that's directed, towards each individual, and it gets very technical, which I can explain a little bit of too if there are any questions later on. But it identifies, each individual by certain procedures and certain technical electromagnetic type of procedures. And so, but it's very hard in the beginning. Obviously, in the first few years, it was very hard for me to explain to anybody. And so, I quickly found out, though, that I wasn't supposed to, because it was just too out of the ordinary. It was unconventional, is the best way to put it. The explanations will turn out to be unconventional, and you put yourself susceptible to being wrongly diagnosed. And that's very, very important. If there's anything that I can get across to folks out there that are really being targeted by these radio wave frequencies, do not or be careful, that is, of who you're explaining it to and how you are explaining it, because it will not come across to the average citizen as being a conventional situation that's listening to you, and you stand a chance of being misdiagnosed for various other issues, which is a damnation that just is unbelievable to even try to explain to you. I went through that also until I gained enough reputation through my writings and so forth to get out of it, and also to bring proper attentions to it.
Yeah. I want to go back just a little bit. When this was happening, what did you do? Did you think there was a way to protect yourself, and did you implement any of that to try to? Did you find any relief?
I did, and basically what I was trying to do was just find out exactly why it was done and how it was done, and just all of the above to kind of substantiate my own feelings about what I was going through, and to identify it and what source it actually came from. And I finally did that. Only it is about as confirmed as I can get it today. But that's another story entirely that would take a long time to explain. But I did it through talking to. I went out first of all, without getting too ahead of myself, there's so much to explain. I went to federal authorities. I went to Congress. I went to Congressman Royce. I went to Congressman Miller. I went to various congressmen, and I tried to submit reports that would make sense to them, in a way that would make sense to them, in order to gain proper attention and help for myself, so I could help my family. It wasn't very successful, especially in those early times when the internet was still young and everything else in this business was really still young. And so what I did, it kept on after me, and it wasn't good, because it would then it got very interruptive, privacy breaching, and it was susceptible to various things like harassing type of issues, such as noise, inner ear noise, headaches, earaches, things of that nature, and it just it was hell, basically. And so it was important for me to get help in general with it also, and I just didn't think that it would ever take the period of time that it did. So I tried to cut to the chase a little bit, and I went out and I gathered up the sources from these people, from both organizations, and believe me, that's where it got to be kind of a heavy set deal, because these are actually rivals, those two particular groups, and so it may appear that at the time appeared that I was maybe I don't know how to phrase it, probably maybe belong to one group more than the other or something, or not knowing them that well at the time, it just wasn't good. The other thing it did is that I think earlier I mentioned to you folks here over the airway that wherever you have this type of business, this illegal type of business, and these type of people, they're very well known to federal sources. So you're going to get wrongly tagged by federal as possibly being doing business with them or being one of them also. And that wasn't so much a problem with me, because I think they that area of my life, they through positions that I held, I think they knew me a little bit better. They just didn't understand what I was doing with them. So there was a lot of confused processes. But then again, I wasn't going to sit still for it. So I think I got more information from the sources that were actually doing it, and they were actually familiar with it. And I got admittances and also direct information from them, much more than I ever could have from federal authorities. So that's basically what happened, and how it came about to be a confirmed situation.
That's interesting. And did you go with anybody, or who were you connecting with at the time to help you with your movement? Because you went to senators, you talked to people that could potentially, you got the ear of these people. So how did you get connected to them, and who were you working with?
Well, it wasn't so much working with anybody. I wasn't out. For one individual group more so than the other. I didn't have any reason to be. It was solely for trying to find out who specifically was identified as doing this to me, and that affected my family also. And there was also another personal issue that I would rather not go into. That it really affected another member of my family who was also targeted at the time, because this member of my family was there with me, in the home, and also witnessed the same area of noticeability of this targeting that I did, which really helped me substantially. I mean, I know that a lot of TIs don't have that, and that meant a lot to me, because what we're trying to do, be it that it's an unconventional area, we're actually trying to substantiate our own, experiences and what we are hearing and what we are seeing. It's a very, very hard thing to go through, as most of you obviously probably know. So it was a combination of not working for them, to stay with your question, as much as it was, just maybe having some pool games, buying a beer, getting a few of them together, and so what's coming down here? What did you do? What happened? What did I do? And that's the way that I found out.
Right. Okay. Were you ever involved with any of the organizations at the time? Did you know about FFCHS, or was that even up and running yet?
Involved in with either one of the organizations, one or the other more so, you mean?
Right.
Yeah, and that's a tough one also, because not having the proper education with either one of them, and be it that I had the history that I gave you when I first came into contact with the business establishments, and just the innocent areas that I did. I ran into both groups and individuals from both groups, and what I can tell you what I wrongly did. I may have hung out with one of the groups more so than the other. However, and that put me into probably quite a bit of trouble with the other, obviously. But as time went, I knew parties from both groups, and they knew that as time went that I was a neutral individual, and I wasn't a member of either group. I didn't have that persona. I didn't give them any reason to dislike or be an enemy, so to speak. So I was successful.
Sorry to interrupt, Robert. I didn't mean to do that again. I was referring to some of the activist groups that the community has.
Oh, the activist groups? No,
Yes.
I was not at the time. I went many years without knowing any of you folks. I really what I did is I stayed to myself with it, and my family, mainly one family member that was kind of involved a little bit also, and or had not involved knowingly or willingly, but unfortunately was just involved, which was a bad situation also. But no, not any activist groups. I didn't. No, I stayed independent, and I worked a lot on my website report. That's why I'm not a professional writer, obviously. So anybody going on to the site, they'll see that it's mainly an autobiography style. So
right.
you'll see maybe various paragraphs that are not maybe interrelated to the subject of the prior, and it's because I just did my best to put it together as an autobiography, as sort of a record and that's very important. I try to encourage all targeted individuals of this type of equipment and this type of electromagnetic unconventional equipment to do the same, because otherwise you'll find it very hard to try to do it later on, or a lot harder. So it's real good to try to keep as much record as you can.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, I think testimonies are important, and this is like a record of what people are going through, and it's also educational to people, and you know, getting everybody together and having a dialogue to try to sort through a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
So,
sure.
Well, I'm really glad Mike recommended me to you. You're a very sensible person, and so I would imagine that people at this time and place that we live in, people would probably. Do you find that people believe you a little bit more these days? Do you still discuss our topic with others?
I think so. You know, I haven't had. I'll put it this way: I haven't had anybody that has disagreed with me. I think that most of my writings have made sense, and I think that, you know, we can pretty well tell, you know, one person from the other if it's you know, if they're how they're targeted and so on and so forth. Likewise, I know that I can only speak for myself on this one. Really, I can really tell if you know, if the individual is really targeted by radio frequency designs or not, you know, or if there are other issues. And I try to, you know, establish that as much as I think they try to establish it with me. So I think the best answer to it is I haven't had any trouble once I got going, especially, you know, the number of years that I've been involved. I don't think I've had any trouble at all. I haven't. By the way, the situation that this is currently in is that that's another area, and it is because of the accuracy and not because of the inaccuracy. So the answer to that would be a definite no. It's something right now that I'm telling the FBI that look, it's time to get off your duff. I'm not taking this anymore. I've had enough, and I've gotten a little tough with it. So I've reached the area where I can do that, and it is time to do it. And I try to do it on behalf of many of you as I possibly can.
Okay. Well, thank you, Robert. I really appreciate speaking with you, and I think you've answered all my questions. So at this point, if you'd like to ask Robert a question, *8. Okay, *8, and I will come to you. Okay, I'm going to come to Ashley first. She's at the top. Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering, did you say the name of your website? If you did, I didn't hear it.
Sure. It's the URL is www.rob-files.com. It's also registered by AT&T as just robfiles.com. So it would either be robfiles, ROBFILES.com, or rob-files.com. And, you know, you can plug that in your browser, or you can put the www complete URL if you wish, because it is a registered international website. And it's you'll see the full nomenclature from that point there.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Oh, well, good. Good. It's a lengthy situation. It really is not necessary. You know, as I stated before, it was mainly an autobiography style, as everybody could probably tell. I'm not a professional writer, but you know, I think that, you know, you can just probably read the first few paragraphs and have enough information, and from there just kind of scroll around, and I think you'll find just about any answer to most anything that you look for.
Hello?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Oh, hi. Yes, Robert. Hi. It's Melinda Fee. Nice to hear your voice. Do you listen to Able Danger at all on YouTube?
No, I don't think.
ABELDANGER.com .org.
I don't think so, Melissa. No, it doesn't sound familiar. No, I haven't lately, due to some issues, other issues I've been involved in. I haven't been real active on the air. Actually, this is, I think, my first time that I've done this. So I'm not really well prepared, and I'm just trying to do as best I can. But
oh no, you're doing great. You're doing great. Everybody's very, very attuned. I was going to say ABELDANGER either com or org, but they have gone into. Have you heard of the Pinkton Pig Farm in Canada?
I've heard of it. I don't know that I know much about it, though. If you care to explain.
Yeah, it's also the Hells Angels. That's why I mentioned it. And they have these parties with all these dignitaries, and they invite a lot of, I think it's Vancouver, but I'm not sure, prostitutes and everything. And it turns out to be rather horrible snuff parties.
Yeah.
And the Hells Angels are kind of like they had two brothers up there who were running it, and they were biker gangs, and that's why I suggested Able Danger. You might DuckDuckGo it. We don't Google anything anymore. It's DuckDuckGo, and just put it in Able Danger Pigton Pig Farm, Hells Angels, and see what you pull up, because those are biker gangs, and they don't mess around. They really have a very dark heaviness to them. So I think you're doing all right if you got in touch with both of them. Are they still operating?
Yeah, they are, but here in the United States, now you are correct. Now that you say Canada, I would be familiar with the fact that a lot of them are have gone through Canada across the state, United States line for obvious reasons, and so I am familiar with the migration there, as well as to some other parts of the country and other parts of the world. But I have gotten to the point where I'm trying my damnedest to migrate. I have been migrate back to my family and try to get things squared away and tend to those matters. But also I'm also tending to my own life, because these folks don't really drop off of you, as you sound probably pretty well familiar with. And that's another part of the issue that I do go through. They all know who I am, and no, they don't really drop away from you that easily, and it's not a very easy thing to contend with by any means, that's for sure.
No, it's not. I mean, every aspect of the life is corrupted and ruined. But anyway, are these the same bikers who support Trump, or is that a different biker?
That one there is a foreign one to there. I haven't heard that one before. I have a hard time supporting Trump myself, so I cannot answer that one.
A bunch of them went to Washington to the inauguration to make sure everything was copacetic, and I guess it was. If you see 200, 300 bikers, you don't mess around there. So.
No.
Yeah, but anyway, I admire you and your work, and somebody wanted to know what kind of shielding you use, if you use any.
I have not used any. I've taken the blunt end of everything that has gone on, believe me. I mean, the sleep deprivation at one time or another, I've taken all the aches and pains. I've come down with a couple of issues. I had injury overseas, which has been concentrated on with and made one heck of a lot worse by sleep deprivation and the various pressures and strains that it can put you in. And I've been there, believe me. I've been in the hospital a few times, and it has at times been really hellacious. I mean, it doesn't stop. It's very at times it hasn't. I mean,
I know. I've had 3 surgeries. I'm going in for my 4th next week, so it's quite awful. I quite concur. But anyway, thank you for joining us on the call. It's really, really appreciated. That's all I have to say. But do look up Able Danger. I think you might, number one, enjoy them. They're kind of iconoclastic. Field McDonald and David Hawkins, and they've done some investigating that I'm sure. If you know very, very deep secret stuff, they do too, and it's amazing how people find it. But they just have moles and plants and research. It's quite amazing what some people have uncovered. So you might enjoy it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was nice talking to you too.
Nice talking to you. Thank you. I'll mute myself.
Thanks, Melissa. Next is California.
I'll have to come back to you.
Okay, California. I'm going to come up to James Lico.
Hello?
Hi, James. Hi.
Yes, hi. Hi, Ella and Robert.
James, I know who you are personally. I've never talked to you before. It's a pleasure to do so.
Yeah, I noticed you have a Facebook account, don't you?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, that's the first place I noticed you on Facebook, and at the time there was a lady who must be some kind of like a agent, and she when I saw you, we're in I don't know, a chat room. I don't know what they call those things over there, but I got into a group, and she started attacking me for something to do with David Schurter, which I have a beef with him, and you were there, and I kind of like took you as kind of with her, and then I never reached out to you because I probably would have, but I thought you were probably an enemy and with her because I think she's an operative. Anyway, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. What?
I don't know who she is, James. I don't.
I'm not going to mention her name because it causes more problems than it's worth. So I'm just going to skip. I've noticed the people coming in from who are with the armed forces and in special operations. I've talked to one guy was a security person, but I found out that the people like you, that the people up the chain are afraid of, is the people who know a lot about these secret things, and they're afraid of you, is what I found out. And so they do this to veterans and all kinds of people who have done nothing to, betray their secrets, but the people who are behind it are afraid, well, you're gonna wake up, you're smart enough to figure out everything, and you're gonna turn on them and start revealing secrets. And even though you never have, so maybe that's why you don't really know what's going on. But that's what I believe is the problem. And what you're going to find out is to know who the real problem is. Like what you said, organized crime. Well, it is organized crime, but it's not the organized crime you thought of, like those biker gangs. They were probably.
I don't know that, James. James's experience. I don't like when people tell people how it is because that's his experience, and we can't take away from that. Who's to say who's right? And it sounds plausible to me. So let's just stay off trying to push other ideas on people. That's all.
Okay. Well, you're going to figure it out eventually. But the wars, World War II, World War I, and the Vietnam War, for example, were not real wars. They were for-profit wars. And if you look up the Bush's history in there, you're going to find that they were banks.
Topic, though.
They owned banks.
This is about him, so if you want to ask him a question about his targeting, feel free.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be curt, but I just want to stay on him and not get into, other people discussing their ideas. And I appreciate your ideas. I just want to stay on him.
Let me just.
Okay, Robert. Well, I'd like you to get in touch with me after we're done. My phone number is 253-929-9289, and my email address, and tell me to repeat either one if you don't get it, is jfelco@gmail.com. That's J-A-F as in Frank, E-L-C-O. And I don't have any, I'm sure I have a lot of questions, but I can't think of any right now. What I could tell you would just, clear up the fog about who's doing what. And
there's no fog there, James. It's confirmed. These systems are all over, and they're not just one or two, and they're not just on the side of the government. Believe me, it is not the case. This has transgressed over to organized crime as well as the federal use these systems. They're just used in different ways. Believe me, I have been through that for years now, and I had a lot of trouble crossing those waters. And these are the website issue. It's all confirmed. It is confirmed situation. Unfortunately, there's just a number of these systems out there, and if one party gets by with one, then the other party gets by with it, and that's the problem. Federal has to come around to protect us, and that's it. You don't allow people to abuse these systems. They're either used by us in the military to protect us, or they're used for our securities, or they are not. They are not to be used as the way that these guys use them. And I don't have any. They know that I am totally against them. You don't abuse these systems, and they have abused the system, and they have definitely been identified. I can tell you every single way that I've identified it and confirmed it, but it is definitely organized crime system. Absolutely, you have to understand that they're in contact with various government agents and various government entities, and they even pay some of these folks off, and it's very definitely their design. It has a unique design to it. They all do. They have different encryptions, and I know many people like yourself, and I respect your work and so forth, James. Don't get me wrong, but it is not just related to government. Not at all. Not even close. I mean, you've got people that you wouldn't believe interconnected, such as higher up sources into the Illuminati area that use these designs. It is not just the government whatsoever. I mean, it's the problem that the government has with it.
Yeah. Makes sense to me because, there's like arms sales, you can sell guns on the black market, and you can sell all kinds of things on the black market. So it makes sense to me what you're saying.
Well, absolutely. And then the other thing that occurs, and that's a very strong, I'm glad that James mentioned that because it is a very strong situation. I mean, the problem is that, and it's one that's very, very strong with me. I've had a lot of issues with the government, the FBI in my case. You do not leave people out here with these designs on them. It's attempted murder. It gets down to the highest source of criminal action there is, and it's very terroristic. These are very terroristic designs, and the one that's on me is not ever to be used on anybody. And let me set things straight, with James and the like, individuals. And I have a lot of respect for everybody, but there's misnomenclatures about who operates these designs. And believe me, it's reached sources that you can very much tell when you get into it with the years that I have. Definitely nobody else would use these designs in the manner that they have been used on me and my family. It isn't going to happen. And I've confirmed it up one way and down the other. And as soon as the FBI and certain federal sources realize that they have got to assist out here the same way as other professionals are doing it, that have been, long-term life employees of the NSA as well as other groups, the better off we will all be. These have been breached from one side to the other, and it's because federal agencies have not been strong enough to help us and to close these matters. They've let it go too far. and it is definitely the fault of the federal agencies for doing that. It's the fault of the perpetrators, in my case, organized crime, but they are not to use these systems in that manner, and they will find themselves in a lot more Dutch and problems than they think they stand tall, because they don't. And so I want to really clarify that. It's if they're against the law and they're used terroristic against us, that's all that need to be confirmed. And when we write our reports that what they're doing to us, if it's not supposed to happen, and if it's against the law, then it's not supposed to happen, and it's against the law, and it's to be upheld and not to let go. So that's a very strong issue, and we have to stay on it, and we don't want to allow any of the government agencies to do what they have done. The problem also is that we have such as the operations such as COINTELPRO and various black operations that the federal agencies have done, and so it's hard for them to come over on that aspect and help also, because it further exposes what they have done. So you have basically one group playing the other. You have organized crime playing federal, and federal playing organized crime sometimes, and it's a hellish procedure, and it confuses matter. But in the course of doing so, it injures a lot of people. It's killed a lot of people, and it's just not to happen. We need protection, and it's very important to emphasize that. In no way, shape, or form do I condone any of this stuff by any of these groups. And I've told them in person, and I'll keep telling them, don't you ever said anything like that on innocent citizens. If you don't think that federal is going to grab you somewhere, you're wrong, because it will happen sooner or later.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's a great answer, and I appreciate your response. And one thing I just want to clarify to people listening, if you want to exchange emails and share your ideas and everything like that, but I like my guests to be able to speak their truth, their story, and speak from their experience. So I don't mean to cut anybody off or be bossy or whatever the case may be. I just want people to, this is your night, and I want you to be able to speak, your story. And I really like it. I really appreciate all the information, and I like how you have articulated everything so far. So I'm very appreciative. Okay, so I'm going to come to Wes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Likewise, I appreciate you how you've held this being my first experience on one of these, Ella, that I can remember. At any rate, I think I may have participated a very short period of time back with a couple of folks that I won't name. It was a few years back, but this is the first longevity issue like this that I've ever attended, and it's been hard for me to do so, but it's been well handled by yourself too, so I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. A lot of people will get to hear this online, and it'll be very educational, and you'll have your story out there as well. So, okay, I'm going to come to North Carolina. You're next on my list. Hi, North Carolina.
Hey, Ella.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. There's two of us.
Oh, two people are open. I just show West North Carolina. Who's that?
I got unmuted, so maybe you could mute me, and I'll come up next.
No, go ahead, Alex. This is Patrick. I can wait.
All right. Well,
all right.
As long as you're okay with that.
Totally.
Just go ahead, Go ahead, Alex. Just remember to keep it short, because we have a lot of questions tonight.
All right. Then can I wait for Patrick? I'm not saying I'm going to talk long. Nobody's asking him particularly about this story. And, I have a couple questions pertaining, directly to him.
Sure, no worries. Okay, so you want to go ahead, Pat?
Sure.
Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, Robert. I really appreciate your perspective. It's really thought-provoking and enlightening. I wanted to ask you two questions. Do you have any insight or opinions as to what may have gone down in Cuba with the U.S. and Canadian embassy staffers apparently being targeted. And then the second question, and I'm sorry if this is too much, do you think it's possible that some of the organizations you're referring to, powerful ones, that I also agree and I know, and I think you probably have a better understanding than I do, but do you think it's possible for them to be working in tandem with, say, one of the 2,000 different federally funded government intelligence contractors, so that the reach could be greater?
Let me clarify, and I get that very well, both of them, Patrick. But let me clarify the first. Are you talking about the symptoms with the U.S. government personnel after reporting symptoms caused by exposure to directional, auditory, and sensory phenomena in Havana, Cuba?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I have that. I have looked at that, and I have studied it, and I have gotten involved a little bit there. And what has happened is that the symptoms are extremely like ours. I mean, they are very. I'm saying like ours. It's like mine. I can only speak for myself, as well as I think that a lot of other targeted individuals have experienced the same symptoms. The earaches, the headaches, prone to one ear than the other, and issues like that, and all the various aches and pains, and it has the very same explanation as what most of us are experiencing. Also, I know myself for sure they're just about exact. But I'll tell you where it goes a little off. The nomenclature for the type of system that is on me, which is a electromagnetic ionosphere type of satellite mixture of design, is that the folks over there in Havana, Cuba, they found that they stepped out of a particular area that didn't occur. So what that more entails me is that yes, it is a same type of frequency field, but it was a directed frequency, a directed energy frequency aimed at a specific area, such as maybe a drone or even a satellite type thing, but it only focused on a certain area. And they found that these individuals, after they stepped again out of this area, that it didn't affect them. So that's where it was totally unlike mine, because in the years that I've been involved, this system tracks myself wherever I go.
Yeah, I've also understood that to be true too. That in several of the cases, when they moved to one part of the room, it would go away and then they would come back. So that's sort of inconsistent with my targeting as well.
Right.
But whom, if anyone, do you think could be behind that? Or if you don't want to answer that or can't,
that's okay. I mean, and it bothers me too. I mean, that absolutely could be a military. Unfortunately, it could be. I mean. It could be a Department of Defense, or it could be government. I mean, we don't know yet. I mean, I think they've all made mistakes. I mean, well, they all have made mistakes, and that's part of the problem. Even our federal agencies have had too many black operations, as we call them, as the nomenclature goes, and there's been too many illegal operations, regardless of who you look at. But the thing that is to look at there is that whoever did that, it doesn't matter who it is, they need to be prosecuted. We need to find out who did it, but it was a local area situation. So in other words, the I like the terminology directed energy weapon in that case where, the military does use, unfortunately, that's war for you. They will use a directed field, direct to a certain area to maybe take out, a certain part of ISIS or whatever the case may be. And but again, the most important thing to recall, in Havana, Cuba, was the fact that it was in a certain area, and when they stepped out, they didn't experience it, so it wouldn't be the type of HARP type of field, basically, that most TIs experience, and it doesn't leave them alone wherever they're at. So it's multi-directional, and it goes just about anywhere that targeted individuals go versus one particular area. Second question is the possible work with other federal entities. Absolutely. I mean, I think that probably in some cases that you could say that organized crime is interconnected with the federal groups in some manner or another. Absolutely. There's no question about that. That's been part of my investigations. It's a matter of to what degree that holds true.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. Let me unmute him again. Inca, did you want to respond? Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. Well, Robert, thank you so much. You're just a great guest, and I really appreciate your perspective on all those issues, and thank you for coming forward. And I agree with you 100% that we need to bring these people to justice, and I hope I thank you for doing your part, because it's evident that you have been doing your part for quite some time. So thank you very much.
And I thank you, sir. I appreciate it very much. The questions are very important, and I will never leave this field. I will see to it one way or the other that we get things handled to the best of my ability, and I have certain ways that hopefully that we can see that through. And they're very good questions, and it doesn't matter again who it is. If they're abusing these things, then they need to be brought forward and they need to be prosecuted. That's very, very important area. Thanks for answering or asking those questions too. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So I'm going to come down to Peace Player. You're popular. There's like 130 people here tonight.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Can you hear me, Ella?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Hi.
Hi. Do you have a question for Robert?
Yeah,
hi.
I just wanted to say hi to him because we've been chatting for years, and I just wanted to say hi.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who is this again?
It's Gina.
Gina, how are you?
I'm pretty good, honey.
Well, it's good to hear your voice.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi, and I appreciate you. That's all.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, and I'll be glad to maintain contact with any of you and try to put some answers to whatever personal issues that anybody has. And that's what I like to do. I won't turn down talking or trying to help anybody, and I will do the best of my ability to keep it up. And it's been a pleasure, talking with you and in times too. I appreciate it very much.
You take care, honey. Thank you.
Thanks, Gina. I'm going to come to Seanster next. Hi, Seanster.
Hi, Ella. Hi, Robert. How you doing?
Hi, Sean. How are you, sir?
Good. I'm from East Coast. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you. You have a lot of great information, and you have evidently a lot of personal experience to back it up. And you touched on two things during your talk that totally rung a bell as to two things during my research over the years that I ran across. At the beginning of your talking, you were talking about some visual perceptual disturbances that resembled like a faint human outline, and I wondered if you've heard of this man, Robert Schellenberger. I linked a book this guy wrote. Robert Guffey wrote a book about his friend that was targeted by SAIC, Naval Intelligence out in San Diego, and by this, and he would see these apparitions, humanoid-looking, faint, not quite invisible, but pretty much invisible, human-shaped things walking around his house. And it turned out that the inventor of that technology, Robert Schellenberger, I don't know how you spell his last name, was a member of the same Masonic temple as the author of the book. So he took his targeted friend to talk with that guy who invented its cloaking technology, but it's not necessary. It could be worn or put on a vehicle, but it also could be projected to do different effects. And they had a long conversation with the guy, and the inventor, Robert Schellenberger, said he was doing a presentation one day, and a naval intelligence lady stood up in the audience and said, "Hey, you can't talk about that. It's top secret." He's like, "Well, I invented it. What do you mean? It's mine." Because he was going to sell it to the Navy, but really what they did was glean the information off him and build it themselves. And so that book is called Project Cameleo. And that's subtitled like a strange story of Homeland Security, invisible midgets, and heroin addiction, because his targeted friend was a heroin addict, and they'd send people, little agile ninja-like athletic people cloaked in this technology into his house and push him over and mess with him, but they could also project it without it being on a solid object like a person or a vehicle. They also project it like a beam wavelength and cause visual disturbances that way. And I wondered if you had an idea if that resembled anything that you were mentioning concerning the visual.
Very, very good question. Thank you very much. Yes, it does. It does have a very heavy aspect to it, and it's important to mention that also. One of the hardest subjects that I have found to talk about and also write about, but very definitely the system on me has a very, very high and clear graphic field. Yes, there's no question about it. The reason I don't write too much about it, I do mention it various areas in my writings, but I don't usually go into detail that I will in these type of communications here this evening, and especially to a direct question like your own, because it's important to those who do, go through these type of visual aspects of these systems to talk to somebody and just be careful, basically, of who you are talking to and who you're trying to, get this across to for assistance or whatever. Mainly, that would be probably the main purpose, or I may phrase it, whatever purpose that it may be. That we have to be very careful and how each of us are explaining it, depending on who our connections are and so on and so forth, because it's very apt to be, in the area of a misdiagnosis or
right.
a wrong opinion. And unfortunately, this is where the subject, where many targeted individuals have tried to get across and maybe misdiagnosed with various illnesses such as related to schizophrenia or something. So it is very definitely something that does happen with some of these systems. Absolutely it does. Does it happen to each and every person? No, but I've had extensive experience with it, and the system on me has a visual electromagnetic field. Period. I'll be very clear as I can with you, that I possibly can, for the benefit of others that are going through that, because it's very, very hard to go through, especially in depending on what stage, what age, and so forth of the targeted victims. But I can wherever I'm at, I can move a certain part of my arm or a certain part of my body in any position that I'm at, anywhere, sitting in an office, in other words, or playing a sport or doing anything. I can look off and I can focalize on whether it be night or day. It's more obvious when in a certain light. It was brought up during the beginning of our talks here this evening, where these electromagnetic fields are more noticeable in an evening environment, a TV light or a moonlight, versus the the heat of the day or the light of the day, however you want to phrase it. In bright light, more not as much so in a lower light level. It's extremely noticeable in my case in a lower light level. And wherever, if I press against something or if I make a gesture, I can see that movement through that electromagnetic field. It's like a faint fog, if you will. Problem is that you can be sitting next to an individual that's not targeted and they won't see it. So that is obviously the main issue right there. Now.
It's attuned to each person's brain frequency signature. I mean, just on a single individual can follow them where they go.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's absolutely correct, and it's very hard to reach that point of study, because what happened to me, I did photographic studies, I did. So many studies that, I was just a number of things, and I couldn't understand, years ago how that was the case, that although there was one individual that I could, that was seeing there are exceptions, in other words, but they're mainly, in my case, it was mainly in my family, and it happened simultaneously to both of us. And so, it's a very, very hard subject to get across, but it is also one that the operators of these systems and also the organizations and the Department of Defense, the military, the Department of Justice, etc., they have a lot of knowledge about, and but they don't open up to it, and that's part of our problem. It's very tough.
Excuse me, sir, is this is all physically harmful electromagnetic radiation of one sort or another, right? No matter what the effect is, it's maybe gradual, but it's all physically harmful, like carcinogenic. And would you agree?
Yeah.
Or no? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely it is. I have done blood pressure studies. I've done all sorts of studies involving that, and yes, there's a lot of issues. What it does basically is it will coincide with the central nervous system, and our brain is our computer, and basically is trying to govern a part of the main part of our body, our human body, our targeted body, and here you have these frequencies that are combating against it. And so it's extremely dangerous, and it's very harmful. I don't like to really get into it too much, because what happens is that I think targeted individuals have quite a bit to be concerned with, and most of us do for obvious reasons, and I don't like to worry them, as much as I can avoid it. But it's something that is very, necessary to understand too. It's a central nervous system issue, very, very definitely.
Yeah, I just wanted to verify that. And another last thing, and when you mentioned your experience with the motorcycle gangs and so forth, it reminded me of a major whistleblower who I believe is very credible. Her name is Kay Griggs, who was married to a very high-level, as she put it, a military assassin, like Black Ops, and her husband. And he would he would abuse her, but then he would black out drunk and spill all the beans about the black ops, and said that the high-level military black ops would contract out with mafias and motorcycle gangs for plausible deniability to, just to confuse the issue. And I just wondered if you thought that was something, or it was just motorcycle gangs kind of related to maybe not the military but the government, or on their own, or if they were working in tandem.
Fortunately, yes, that is the case, and to what degree I've not been able to pinpoint, but that's one of the strong reasons why we can't get the assistance that we all try to get. And I think until there's enough exposure on that, we will continue to have our problems with it, and that's one reason why I can see now how important these talk shows are, and how important publications are to get these things across. And I'm currently involved in trying to get that very subject a little more clarified in the first few paragraphs of my site report too, since it's in no particular order, and I'm not a professional writer. But it's really important to touch on that a lot more than what I have.
Oh, yeah, I got your web page. It's really good. I'm going to go through it. Kay Griggs is worth a listen. She is a 10-hour interview. It takes a while to chip away at, but you wouldn't believe stuff, and you would probably recognize a lot of stuff that average people wouldn't recognize. And I totally appreciate your stance on this, especially being that you have experience in the field and you didn't just go to the dark side for money or anything. I guess you could have. You have the technical knowledge that you could have, I guess, but it's obvious, these, and like you say it, they are crimes against humanity. They are war crimes. These are weapons of mass destruction. These are infernal, insane programs and weapons that people just can't even imagine, that invade a person's mind and body to the point where it's just ungodly. I mean, no other way to put it. And so I agree totally with you there. And, hey, I'm very glad to speak to you, and you're a great resource to our community, sir. And I bid you a good night.
Thank you very much. It is very, very hard. I will admit that right off the bat. I still have issues with it a great deal. It's very, very tough, and we'll just keep working on it. And exposure is the most important. Thank you very much with you too, sir. I appreciate it.
Have a good night, sir. Good night.
You too. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, Sean. Let me go down to Oklahoma. Hi, Oklahoma.
Hello. Hello, Robert. My name is. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to ask your question, but there you were, so I'll let you ask it yourself.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Robert. I'm Melissa. I'm in Oklahoma, and you said something at the top of the interview that I was very interested in. You said that many of our cases are being monitored unbeknownst to us. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, I'll try to the best that I can. And what happens is most of us have the the inner ear, loud noises and so forth, frequency noises. In my case, I have distinct frequency noises, and the inner ear actually is going through the frequency. They're penetrating our body, obviously, and it goes through the brain, but we feel it on the inner ear, and we think in earlier stages that it's a degree of tinnitus or something, and we go to hearing doctors and things of this nature, and we find out, little by little, at least I did in my case, exactly what it is, and so you can really get to the point to where you ascertain the different feelings and the different sounds. And from the main perpetrator, I guess I can phrase it in my case, that is the operators in my case, as opposed to somebody monitoring, such as a federal source monitoring. It's very distinct in sound mainly.
Okay. Well, I I thought maybe you were alluding to the fact that maybe those in the intelligence communities or the military knew this was going on, and they're trying to find a way to put a stop to it, and they're monitoring us on the good side of things. That's
precisely what I mean to say, and that's the way that I interpret it, and I think that that's the way that it goes. I think that nobody normal within our bureaucracy likes to see any of us suffer, and so I think under certain circumstances when maybe you hear something a little bit more foreign than what you're used to hearing, and in our cases that certainly in mine that I can definitely tell the difference, and more than likely it's there to monitor a little bit to see how they can help us.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. This has been so enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you, too.
Okay, I'm going to come down to Northwest California. Hi, Northwest California.
Hello. Hi, Ella. It's Roseanne. Hi, Robert.
Hi.
How are you tonight?
Hi. I'm fine. You know, you were one of the first people that I connected with on Facebook. I don't know if you remember me.
Yes, I do, but it's been a long time, and since you identified yourself, I didn't want to try first, or have an unrecognition. So yeah, how are you?
I'm good, and I noticed that you had stopped, coming on to Facebook, and I was worried about you. So I'm really happy to hear your voice. You were very supportive to me. We had a lot of conversations about this online, and we were actually at the same meeting in LA and didn't know it. With two FBI agents.
That's right. I recall that now. Yeah, that was quite a while back.
Yeah, that was quite a while back, and you gave a speech there that was really wonderful, and you were very helpful to me in the beginning stages of my targeting, and I want to thank you for that. I also wanted to ask you, you said that you had certain connections, and I always appreciated your knowledge and your approach to this, which was just no-nonsense approach. And I wonder if you've managed to get any help at all from those connections that you have.
Really, really good question. I can just keep trying. I think that probably, to be perfectly honest, which I am, and straightforward, that's the only way I will operate. And I'll answer any question that anybody poses to me. I've gotten a lot of help. Mainly, I think from all of you. First of all, online with different. Resources such as Facebook and the different websites and the different input in general that everybody has put across, and however, a lot of personally, I think that probably it's been the longevity of this situation on me that I think rather than improve, sometimes it may have gotten a little harsher. It's probably due to just getting older, and I think I could probably absorb it a little bit better when I was younger, and a lot better than I have here in an older age. But I'm still holding strong. I'm upright. I still work out. Everything is going okay. I'm a Christian man, so. Thank God for everything that He does, and without Him, we wouldn't be able to do anything. So I think, with all of that said, that just being on the side of the good Lord, and on the side of honesty, and on the side of justice, that's the best way I can answer your question. That's the help that that I get, and also it's from family. I have 2 daughters, and I have grandkids, and I have a couple of great-grandkids now, and they all know the website, and they've all been real supportive. It may be confusing, but they've been supportive. I've also been in an isolated area, years and years ago when they were much younger, and I've gone through that area as probably a lot of targeted individuals have. But I would say probably, to cap that part of that conversation off that I responded to you is that it's a little more harsh, when you get older. It's a situation that's very abusive, and it's got to stop. I think that probably there's one sentence in a few paragraphs that I've done in my writings that I tried to get a little bit more attention from the FBI and personal meetings as well as phone calls, and that would be that these folks do not seem to honor hospital stays either. And so if you have these upturns from a certain group, operators, while you're being hospitalized, or and in my case, it's been a couple of operations, one stemming from an injury overseas that's been very hindered by the directed frequency abuse for many years of it. And so during hospitalization, I in my writings, I've reported that in hopes of getting more attention from federal sources. And I don't know. It's been very tough. But I think that one statement that it has proceeded at times while hospitalized too, regardless of patients and sensitive hospital equipment. It very much can do that. I mean, frequencies know no wall, so it's very hard, and it can take a toll on you. I just recommend that. What I've done is I've done a lot of running, working out, treadmill, weights, and just trying to stay with God and family, and that's the best help we can get in the meantime.
I have one other quick question. I know there are people waiting. I agree with you about organized crime, and I think it's quite large, big, huge. Do you think that the reason? Well, I have a theory that they really want to blame this on the American government, because the whole thing is to discredit everything in our country right now. Our military, politicians. I mean, if you just look on Facebook, our whole country's being discredited. And I don't really believe that it's that bad. I think there are a lot of good people in government. Bill Binney, Kirk Weedy, coming out of, these systems. So I'm wondering why we're not getting help from the FBI, say. And do you think organized crime has taken over? I mean, are they in charge now of this country? What do you think is going on?
I think the word autonomy is the best way to answer that. Unfortunately, it's the J. Edgar Hoover effect, and it's called power and autonomy, which is we've studied psychology, which I did in college, that it has to do with a self-governed, any group that has an amount of power or that struggled on behalf of gaining power. And the FBI has done that. They're a very powerful group. They know that. Nobody investigates them. They do their own thing. They've had their own COINTELPRO type black operations, and I think they're about as guilty as organized crime is in a lot of area. And I at the current time, and having kind of a rough time with them and getting them to break the routine, so to speak. And I think that it's an injustice to their oath, the United States Constitution, and basic human rights. And I don't know any other way to put it. And I'll keep publicizing them as I will organized crime. And right now, I place them both on the same level.
Okay. Well, that answers my questions. Anyways, you're wonderful. More power to you. And thank you so much for doing what you do.
Just talking to you as well as other folks that I haven't talked to before, and I really glad to that I got able to talk to you. Thank you.
Sure. Well, likewise. Bye-bye.
Stay in touch.
You too.
Roseanne's a woman. She's done a lot of activism. She's written a book, and just a very, very kind woman, as many of these people are. Very kind.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's been a real pleasure for me. Although I'm a little nervous this evening doing it. I didn't realize that you had this many folks and it was this organized, and it's been very good. But it's been a little bit nervous for me my first time. I'm not I'm not a professional speaker, and I'm just trying to do my best, and I hope it's adequate. Because I know it's an important subject, and I was glad to get the opportunity also.
Yeah, you're a very popular one, too. I guess people do know you. And I remember seeing the Rob Files when I first found the community a couple of years ago. So your name is pretty well known. You just didn't realize that, And as far as, like, the people on the call, I get really nice people, so I'm really blessed that way. And there's a lot of really nice people in the community. So it's great when we can get together. And as far as, like, how you're doing great. I mean, everyone's just ordinary people. Nobody was ever no one ever planned to be a target individual. I mean, everyone was just living their lives, and and here we are, and trying to get the word out and do activism and educate each other and be supportive. So, thanks.
It's been really, really great, and it's done a lot of good for me as well, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Mike called me. I think he called me one night. Also, he sent me a quick messenger, I think, and then all of a sudden you were on the phone, and I really appreciated the opportunity again.
Okay. Well, thanks again. So now I'm going to come to Northeast Texas. Okay. Hi, Texas.
Hi, Ella. Hi, Robert. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad that Mike recommended you.
Well, hi, Howard.
Hey. Are you there?
Yeah. Yes.
There.
What was your name again?
I prefer not to say right at this moment.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But I'm very glad that Mike had you come into Ella's show. Okay, since 2010, I've heard two other people in two different venues describe the experience of, it sounds like it would be like a wave blast, but one lady describes it very well, how there's I don't know how to even word it, but she words it well, that afterwards she felt as though she felt her head laying on her shoulder. And then another lady, I had heard her describe it, or I didn't hear her. I saw her type a description as if she sensed herself back behind herself, almost in an outline bodily form. And that was after, sort of like literally taken aback. I have wondered if those are the older types, technologies that maybe of the time period that you were speaking of, that they knew if they couldn't, use those too much, or literally people would have died multiple times over. Are you familiar with those kind of scenarios?
I'm trying my best to understand what it is there. That this is kind of the first one that may be a little confusing to me. Can you clarify that a little bit more? You mentioned a wave type of. Is it a field type of effect, or like looking through a?
Somebody used the word. I think the lady I saw who typed it used the word field and sensed herself as a second field behind her, and she had the experience. And then the other lady is on, usually on Ella's calls a lot, so maybe Ella could try to describe it better, but she describes it after she was, quote, hit, that it's almost like, I don't know if it's disintegrating effect or something, but she sensed her head rather than being in the position it was like as if she sensed it outside of herself, then laying off to her shoulder.
Yeah, I don't think that Robert hasn't discussed anything like that at all. It's pretty esoteric, so he probably doesn't have too much to comment on it, and I don't either. I don't really know. I've heard her mention that, but it's kind of hard to understand and wrap my head around. So I don't know, Robert.
Well, maybe Mitch will come on because Mitch is the one who describes that second one, the lady who's in targeted justice.
That's a tough one. I don't think that I have any too much comment on that one. I don't know what that involves there, or what's going on there. That's kind of the first stumper of the evening right there. I'm sorry I can't answer that for you.
Well, I really appreciate that. The other thing is the language you used, encryption. Is that what you used when you first started about?
Yes,
was
ma'am.
It encryption.
Yes.
I really, really appreciate that because that makes some things make much more sense.
Yeah, it's not intended to explain, and they are encrypted designs. So if they were not, then we would, it'd be a lot more easier for us to go in for assistance and explain them in our writings and so forth. But they're not intended to make us look normal or explain as in a normal aspect of explaining. It's supposed to be completely not, and that interpretation of what they want us to interpret in some of these designs is actually what they want us to do, and so we have to be. I can again, speaking for myself, I'm saying we, but I have to be very careful in how I explain certain things. I'm doing it as straightforward as I can, but I have no identity exactly in the format that you've asked the question. These are like electromagnetic fields, and they do have a visual content to them, to mine at any rate, and it can have a graphic nature to it also. And these are things to harass us and to solicit our response, I guess would be the best way to put it. So if there's something that they can make in the processes of the scientific endeavors of doing these designs that can throw us off, they're certainly going to do it, because that's something that encrypts their design and doesn't identify them. And that's how they can get by with it, a lot more easier, of course.
Thank you for answering that. Okay, so Texas, thanks for your question. So I'm going to come down to 929. If I can get it to unmute. Can you hear me, Robert?
Yes,
Oh, good. I got dropped from the call and had to call back in from a different phone, so I'm glad you hear me. Okay. Oh, now my computer is doing something funny. I have a lot of things that happen when I'm trying to.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, it's Alex from New York.
Hi, Alex. Hi.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Robert, for very useful information. And I have two questions. One question is, how these criminal groups got possession of this technology and using the satellites? And the other question is, how the international group, if it's a group or a syndicate or something, using the foreign countries involved in this, how as one group. And you consider this contractors part of the mafia group? That's my question.
Do I consider them part of the mafia group?
Yeah.
Yes. As a matter of fact, without mentioning, I'm trying to think whether this would be good to mention online or not, but the answer to it would be yes. They have international connections, including mafia. There has been one particular one that I have had direct experience with myself, and it wasn't too good either. So, but the answer to that is definite, and they are definitely international groups. One percenters is probably the best thing to remember. One percenters, the two particular groups that I named earlier are what they are one percenter networks, and there's a number of different groups that are involved in the international one percenter networks, and the two that I've had the negative experience with were the two that I mentioned earlier, and the two that I mentioned on the site report. And are some of them interconnected with mafia? Again, absolutely. They are. I can't speak for them or all of them, but I have had direct experience with the mafia type group, very definitely myself. In past years, yes.
And how are they able to use the satellites and other technology if they are just mafia? This is a military technology.
Oh, now I don't know that they would be interconnected. I have no clue. First of all, to that question, I don't know. And it's never been. It's not my business. I've never been inside these groups, so to speak, where I've attended private meetings or anything of that nature. I wasn't fully trusted in my position with them. I mean, they knew me and I knew them. A lot of members. They call them full patch members in those organizations, and they. Very definitely, though, those particular groups were known, to have certain connections, and one of mine, I'll just be a little redundant and say yes, I have had direct experience with one group within this area, which was mafia. So the answer again is yes. How they use the equipment, though, and if one or the other knows that the other, I can't answer that. I don't think that you're going to find one percenter groups, such as the ones that are my perpetrator, that are going to, trust anybody outside of their own. They're very tight groups, and so if they are say interconnected with a particular mafia group, or they do business in certain areas one way or the other. I don't know specifically what that business is, because I have no way, shape or form of knowing exactly, what it would be. And but I can just tell you that that has occurred. So whether or not they have knowledge or that they use the same type of system, I don't know. I just know that the one percenter connections, interconnections, people, that this case of mine happened, and it's very important. I'm trying to clarify it as much as I can because it's important that it was related very definitely to these groups.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Ella, for taking my call.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Al. Thank you much. Okay, Florida, you're next. Hi, Florida.
Hi, my name's Adrian, and Robert helped me a lot when I first started out and got on Facebook, and I didn't know what was going on with me for about 20 years. And he made things so clear and was so patient. So I want to tell you thank you.
Hi, how are you?
You remember my name, Adrian?
I sure do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what I think so amazing, because, I've read through your story, but the information you've given tonight just fuels what's going on with me, because I think we're a lot alike. Mine started in 1986, 87, something like that, and so did yours. And I know I'm satellite, too. And the other thing tonight, when you said about the bikers, it was like this little bell went off in my head, because I get V2K, and I guess 2 or 3 years after I was getting V2K, but well before Facebook was available, at least to me, one of my perpetrators identified himself as Biker Bob. And
is that right? Oh, okay.
I mean, I know it's probably not Biker Bob, but I mean, I thought that was just because I didn't know any bikers. But it just.
Oh, I see what you mean. It was one of the. I think I recall that it was just a trade name or something, a tag name that he used for being on Facebook or something.
Oh, maybe so. But I just appreciate it, and I get the same symptoms that you do. I've been totally mapped, and I know it's satellite because I've been out of the country. And as you get older, they do get meaner. So, and I consider them terrorists and human traffickers too. So,
absolutely.
And I want to thank you for all the work you've done, and you're still my friend on Facebook, so I appreciate that.
Well, and you'll always be my friend. I'm glad to talk with you finally, and I haven't corresponded with you in a long time, but I sure remember you like most of the friends that I have on there and still do, and I hope to retain everybody, and I hope everybody to get well, and I hope everybody we can get the assistance that we need, because it's really much needed, and I'm really glad to finally talk to you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Did you ever get holograms? Did you ever see holograms at night?
Yes.
Okay, I did too, so that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a tough one, and I haven't gotten much into phrasing the holography words, but absolutely I have, and it's a tough one to deal with, because the training I had in the beginning, they solicit responses, and in some ways the capacities that they do that is through holography, and you are trying to figure out and protect your home and your family, and some of these things do come across in the electromagnetic terminology and electromagnetic fields and so forth, in that technology, they do come across as holography, you betcha.
Yeah, but you helped me remain calm and get through my PTSD, so I appreciate it. And that's all I needed to tell you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very glad to hear it, because those have been my efforts, because it isn't about me. It's about hundreds of people, and we really need to convince some federal assistance. Really do. And I wish you well, and please stay in contact. Email me once in a while or something, and I'm still on Facebook, so by all means.
Yeah, you have something on fairly recent on my page anyway, so I'm glad you're on tonight. Okay, thanks a lot again.
Thank you, Adrienne. Good to hear from you.
Same.
Thanks, Adrienne. She's a very sweet woman.
She sure is.
Okay, so I'm going to come down to 657. Hi, 657.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Yes.
Yeah, hey, did you live in Long Beach?
Yes, sir, I did.
What year was that?
I moved there in 1987, between 1987 and 1988. It was I got into, specifically, I sold property in Colorado in 1986. I moved to San Diego with an engineering company, and I believe that I served just about a year before I got the offer to go to Long Beach with another company. So that would be right turning out of 1987 into 1988. That's correct.
Okay. And that's where your targeting started, you said?
Yes.
Wow. Do you think that still some of those perpetrators live over there in Long Beach, or probably not?
There has good question. There has been a lot. There's been a lot of cases and a lot of business closures after a case that I was involved in, and I was in a long-term superior court case with one of their co-defendants. And I hope I don't have to explain that tonight, but it is true. And although they weren't related to me, it was just a very confusing case. I would rather cover that one at some later date. But still there. If they are, they probably wouldn't be operating in the same capacity because a lot of attention was brought to that area.
All right. Well, my last question is, have you researched the California senator? Because you know she has a website about prosecuting gang stalking, right?
Phrase that one more time for me. Say that one more time.
Have you researched the senator of California?
No.
Because she has a website where she prosecutes gang stalking or any type of information to electronic harassment and gang stalking.
And what senator is that specifically, though?
Yeah, it's Cameron. It's Senator Cameron of California.
Okay. No, I have not. No.
Okay, maybe you should probably research it, and then maybe you can try to contact somebody in our office, and with all the information that you have and stuff like that, and your past history and also the present stuff, maybe you guys can maybe you can help her out in educating a little more about this.
Well, I will do that. I've got a notepad in front of me, and I've got it noted down. I'll take a look at it. You betcha. I appreciate the drop of the name to me. You bet.
Yeah, because I was told by Derek's one of his friends, or it's a TI, and at first I wasn't too sure if it was a legit website. But after researching it, I found out that when she was the the California District Attorney or District Attorney, I'm not sure what county, and I guess at that time, or General District Attorney, and I guess she had a few complaints about this, and then she took it into consideration and started investigating, found out that this was actually going on, which was probably hard for her to grasp. Like you said earlier, it's hard to understand this because if you never experienced it, you wouldn't really know,
Exactly.
All right. Yeah, hey, that's all I wanted to know. Oh, are you still here in California in San Diego?
No, sir. I'm in another area right now. I've been in Huntington Beach, specifically the Fountain Valley area for the last couple of years.
Oh, okay, because, this is where I grew up. I'm right here in Orange County. My name is Johnny. I grew up right there on Warner and PCH. I don't know if you, not grow up there, but that's where I've been living for a while, off of Warner and PCH, right by Balsa Chica on Sunset Beach.
Wow. Yeah, that's real close to where I'm at. I'm over here, I'm over here right in Fountain Valley, which is right next to Huntington.
By Oscar Park.
I'm right there.
I'm surprised you haven't seen any of the flies I've been passing out, because I've probably passed out of close to about 150 now, maybe more. I'm not sure.
Well, what I would really appreciate from any of you folks, and it would be to email me, or any way that you want to contact me, phone or whatever. I'd be glad to talk with you in person if you want to do that. My email address and all that personal information is on the website. I'm not afraid to hand it out.
Okay, cool. I'll send you an email, and we'll go from there. And,
please.
You take care of yourself, and I hope to hear from you soon, all right?
Thank you, Johnny. I appreciate it. I will. I look forward to it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Johnny. He went through my head when you mentioned you from Long Beach. Okay, so Michigan, you're next. Hi, Michigan.
Hi, Ella. Do you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay. It's Mark from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I only had 2 questions for your guest. What's your definition of the 1%, and wouldn't the 1% be targeted?
Well, one percenters, as is the nomenclature that they call themselves, one percenter groups means that the other, they are at the very tight group and don't agree with the other 99% of the population. That's about the best way to explain it. Very private group. Very, it's organized crime, and so the 1% nomenclature is what's been actually. I haven't researched the actual history of it, but they don't mind being called that. It's wherever you go on their, any of their data that may be online, which I really don't do anymore, but. They're well known, these organizations, as 1%ers, or the 1%er network.
I see.
Network, to the plural. I think that the majority of them, and really, they're so private that I would just be guessing at some of the following is that for the most part. The different groups are different territories, and they're different states or different, likewise different countries. But likewise, if they have, one group in one territory of the United States, and the other is in another territory of the United States, it doesn't mean that both of them are not overseas in the same area. So it's a territorial thing that goes on amongst them, and it probably is different wherever in each location that they are located, but they're international.
Okay. I mean, my personal definition, in order to be in the 1%, they would be somehow, in one way or another, outstanding. That's just my take on that.
No, I don't. Outstanding as to outstanding in what regard? You mean in what regard?
Whatever that 1% would be.
That 1% would be just outstanding. Is that what you're?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, I don't personally call them outstanding. I can tell you that. I mean, outstanding to me is kind of a nomenclature that somebody.
Why would they be in the 1%?
Excuse me.
Why would they be in the 1%? And whatever term that 1% would be, if they stand out.
They stand out. Yes, that's possibly that's true. And again, it just means that they have their own beliefs, and it's not like the other 99% of the population.
Correct. So if it's 1% and it's standing out, wouldn't they be targeted?
Yeah. Possibly they could be. I mean,
I say that too. I agree.
Yeah, yeah. They are by me, and so I imagine, I mean, they do. It's not what I would phrase good work. I mean, it's pretty rotten stuff. So if it's been abused with my family for years and I didn't do anything to them. I would think that would be typical, and they're not outstanding to me. That's about the best way I can clarify it to you. I don't have anything good to say about it.
I mean, you could be the 1% of, scientific research. You could be the 1% of, an author, if you could be a 1% of anything, you know what I mean? So, it was rather vague. That's why I had to ask, what's your definition of 1%? And then I told you mine, and we kind of agreed.
It's not my definition at all. This is the you would have to research where actually the 1%er originated, but that's what they are deemed are 1%ers. 1%ers, in other words, for instance, the Hell's Angels, for instance, in my case, the Mongols MC are 1%ers. They're both 1%er groups, and the terminology may be used loosely. I don't know. It's not for me to say, but that's what the terminology is amongst federal authorities, and that's what the terminology is amongst their groups. But it isn't necessarily connected to being outstanding, not at all. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that at all. It means that, again, to repeat myself, that their beliefs are very strong in areas. They're very private. Obviously, it's a criminal. It's organized crime, and it's different than 99% of the population, and they don't mind the nomenclature themselves. So, but it isn't related to being outstanding or any other. I think what we're into is semantics, and so that's kind of hard to deal with.
Yeah, that sounds like semantics. Well, thanks for trying to answer the question, and we'll just move on now to New York. Okay. Sometimes that happens. Okay, New York City. Hi, New York.
Good evening. Peace and blessings, Ella. Peace and blessings to our targeted community. My name is Dennis, and I'm retired law enforcement, and I do believe there's a law enforcement aspect to this. I'm kind of strong-minded and strong-willed. And when I was there, that's where it started. Thank God that I was able to retire and get out of there. But the aggravation and the stuff persists. My question to you is, and I'm sorry, and I appreciate your openness and your experience and your time. Being I've been through this for 14 years, and I hear an older lady that's been since 86, I think you've been in it since 86, it doesn't make me feel good. When I go on these calls, I say to myself, one more year, it's going to stop, one more year, it's going to stop, one more year, it's going to stop. My question is, there anywhere that we can go, that maybe rural area, where we can build a community and look out for one another, black, white, Spanish, doesn't matter, and vet them very good. And there would be some infiltrating, but has anybody ever created or thought about doing something like that, where people can go and come together?
If you want to talk tomorrow, off this call, there is a lady who's trying to do something like that in East Oregon, very similar to that. So if you want to shoot me an email, but Robert might know something. What do you know, Robert?
No, I think that that's important to do, and I would like to know where that is too, because we absolutely it's great. I think that that's part of the problem. I will say that some of these groups, as you know, being in law enforcement, they can be pretty prejudiced individuals depending on the group and depending on where their locations of operations are, and it's not my belief. I mean, there is nobody, I don't distinguish. I don't distinguish that way. We're all the same. We were created all by God, and I'm a Christian man, and I just believe firmly. I mean, that's the nature. That's the truth of it, and anybody that doesn't follow me and my family in Christianity, I would rather not be a part of unless I can help them in some way or another. I would never turn away anybody due to belief, race, creed, color. I'm probably a mixture of, well, I am. I'm a mixture of a little bit of everything myself. So I just, I think it's a good idea, and I wish that everybody could think the same way. And again, it's really important. That's a problem that goes on in the world, and it's too bad. We've got too many areas of disagreements and too much fighting and too much everything going on right now. It's a very confusing world right now, and we all need to be together for sure.
Yep, we need to be unified. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We should come together. It's weird, but if this evolved, this diabolical and evil program, it should bring us tighter together. This we can't be separated with stuff like this. But me being in this for 14 years and hearing that you've been in it for so long, it doesn't make me feel good. I'm be honest with you. And to hear older women in general that are going through this, it doesn't make me feel good one bit. So I'm looking for answers. Nobody have the answers. So maybe if we come together in a compound or somewhere out, live off the ground, live off the grid, come together and support each other, maybe we can come up with something.
It sure would be great if we could, and I fully agree with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ella.
Thank you.
I have time for one more question, maybe two. It depends how quick you guys ask your questions. Okay. New Jersey, you're next on the list. Hi, New Jersey. Sometimes people walk away, or New Jersey. Maybe they're not at their phone.
Not there, huh?
I'm sorry? Okay. Are you still there, Robert?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, good. I heard something weird there. Okay, California, you're up next. Do you have a question for Robert?
Yeah, never mind. I think he answered it. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Let's see.
It's funny. I've just now started to get a little relaxed in this situation and talking. It's been again the first time that I've done this, and it was it's been great for me to be able to voice all of this, and I just hope that I have been able to do it as clearly as possible. But I really appreciate the opportunity, though.
Oh no, I'm thankful to you. I've had a lot of texts just from me being on the call. People are very happy to listen to you and are really enjoying it. And you know what? This doesn't have to be the first time. If you want to come back and talk about different topics, you're more than welcome. Anytime you want to come on, you just let me know. And it doesn't have to be for the full time. If you want to share something for an hour, anytime that you want. I have these calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay, well that would be great. I will definitely keep it in mind and try to join in. Does it take the same sign-in nomenclature that you emailed me?
It's the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that would be great. I will try to do that as much as I can because it really has been enjoyable for me too.
All right. That's what I was hoping. Okay, we have time for one more question. Central Colorado. Did you realize you were talking for almost 3 hours? People are always surprised.
Yeah, it's been a long one, all right, for sure. But no, I didn't realize.
People are always surprised how fast the time goes. Okay, Central Colorado, you're my last one.
I just wanted to know if there was anyone else for you, Robert, was going to attend the walk in Delaware this April 7th. I was looking for.
No, ma'am.
We go with somebody to meet there or something. I'm nervous about going, and I'm wondering if anybody else is. I mean, you got to be stupid to go to a place where you admit that you're a targeted individual. I don't know. It just seems kooky to me, but seems things
Well, I think
I'm
it's
going to go.
powerful. Yeah, you
Hoping-
should go. I think it's very powerful to get together, and we can't be scared. You know, you guys know how I am. It's like you got to do it. You just show up and.
I would sure like somebody, you know, to be there with, maybe, or show up. Or,
Yeah. If you're asking me if I could go to Delaware, I would love to, and any situation that would help, absolutely. But if that's coming up here real soon, I've got so many things going on in the mill that I don't know whether I would be able to or not, and a couple are health related too. I have another operation at the Veterans Administration coming up that probably won't be an easy one for me, but again, I will be in in that process for I don't know, at least a couple of months or so, but I will still be active and still be doing what I can do on my site, my website, and the site report and so forth, and talking to anybody that I can, or an email, or in any other way locally. But I won't be able to do any out-of-state travel for at least a month or two.
Okay. Well, thanks. Again, so now that was the last question. So I'm going to go. I'm just going to end the call now. But again, you're welcome to come back anytime. And I know I'm going to have this up on YouTube, and so a lot of people will be listening that way as well. So, yeah, I'm so glad that Mike told me about you, and that you were able to make it, too. I was a little nervous, so I was like, I don't know if he's on the call. So, but you were here, so it all worked out.
Well, yeah, thanks very much again. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I would like to, do more of it if I can in the future. Let me know how to, check out that YouTube and any other thing that, you folks are doing that maybe would benefit me, or that I could add to, my writings and so forth would be really appreciated. I'd like to check it out.
Yeah, tomorrow I'll call you real quick and give you and text you some information, kind of give you some links and stuff for you to kind of take a look at.
That would be great. I appreciate it. And again, thanks very much, and thanks to all of the folks out there. And I hope that I know the awareness has never been stronger for all of us, and there are good things coming. So, keep up the prayers and the good hopes, and we're going to get there.
Okay, thank you. And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and end this. Everyone take care, and I'll see you guys on Thursday. Good night now. Good night.
Beginning, it would be happening later on when the exposure was more in tune, and or the territory disputes were more so ironed out as who was going to handle what in what vicinities and what areas, what geographic areas and so forth, and there were a lot of bars. There was a lot of crime. There was also a big, you can think of it as a great big, huge conglomerate carnival type thing, the Long Beach Pike, which is no longer there, and surrounding that whole area, due to the fact that it was a roller coasters and a lot of rides and things of that nature going on. They had a lot of bars and businesses surrounding that, where people would come from all over the place to, for different businesses and different meetings. So it was a pretty rough area, and kind of a hangout for a lot of people also.
Yeah, and then as time went on, the socioeconomic of Long Beach kind of changed, as we know. Anything south, like Venice Beach and all those places have kind of evolved as LA is kind of sprawled. So that's just interesting. I was curious how it was during this time. And so what exactly happened? Was it gang stalking or contracted stalking, or was it just straight directed energy weapons? Because you did mention seeing them. So I'm just curious. What was the first initial stage of targeting, and when did it work into the V2K aspect?
Well, that's a good question also, because it came in stages. What I noticed in the very beginning, and that's mainly looking back on it, as I noticed some things waking up at night in my home. I was right in the middle. By the way, what happened is that I moved into a real nice house, and it was my wife and I at the time, and also my daughter, my younger daughter, and we moved into a very nice area, we thought, and all surrounded by, all of these things going on too, and that's what kind of started the problem. I didn't really have to do anything. At the time, I rode a motorcycle myself at times and it was just more or less a personal hobby. And I came from San Diego. Originally I had property in Colorado, and I came out to San Diego and accepted a position with an engineering company in San Diego. And then I had an offer with another engineering company in Long Beach, who told me that had my responsibilities offer as mainly the Long Beach vicinity area. So they obviously told me that my best bet would be to move to Long Beach. And I noticed that in doing business there and just minding my own business the first couple of years that I was there, obviously I would go, being a lot younger at that time, and later on separated and living alone, I would go occasionally for a beer, play a game of pool, and that's where I met these people. And again, no problems. I never had any problems I don't give anybody any problems anyway, and I didn't get any from them either. Some of them I came to know, I wouldn't say well, but I knew, a few of them. They knew who I was. I think there was a trust, that from a few of them to me, and then there was a lot of it was very very confusing and trying to figure out what was happening. And so what basically happens in those cases, and it did myself, is you go into a self protection, and especially I was trained in the military, and then trying to protect my family is basically how I wound up in the court process. And from there on, it just went on and on. As once they usually hook into you with this type of targeting, which is an electromagnetic type of ionosphere type of arrangement, and it can be like you can think of it as sort of a satellite tracking system. That's what they had on me. I would notice that it confused me further in the beginning, because I would notice that wherever I went, on business trips, even out of state and so forth. And
how did you come to discover that it was satellites?
Well, just by the nature of traveling. I mean, it wasn't a local situation. It was wherever I went, and, including out of state.
And how did you know definitively that it was the Hells Angels, or this group of criminals?
Well, it was very obvious in the beginning. As I said, they weren't wearing identifications because they didn't know who I was, and at the time there was a criminal situation going on with the two groups. They're actually rivals, and what happened is that they were both. I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and what happened? They were in a situation, a territorial situation dispute called North versus South. And so one being North and the other group being South in their dealings. And so Long Beach was kind of a confusing area on who was doing marketing on what type of product lines and what type of other issues in their business. So that's how they were both involved. Now later on, they were wearing identifications, and there were specific identifications, but not in the very beginning.
And what was Long Beach like during that time? Was it a big bike community? What was the economy? And because I used to live in California, so I'm curious what Long Beach was actually like. I can't think of the right word. When all this was occurring, because Long Beach, I can remember being really rough at one point, and then it kind of got cleaned up and had a different demographic moved in. So I'm just curious, because it may be prior to even me being, before I even moved to California. So I'm just curious of the environment and what it was like when you were living in Long Beach and experiencing this.
Well, that's a very good question because it was on the 60-minute program. Probably the best way to answer it and get right to the point. There were investigations by the well-known 60-minute program, and they were the worst police department in the United States. So there were a lot of payoffs going on. There were a lot of illegal dealings. A lot of these folks were taking over various business establishments, which mainly included restaurants and as well as bars and restaurants, or a combination of both. Most had entertainment, food, serving, as well as alcohol and pool tables and things of that nature. They were clean places. They didn't look, they weren't identified really to innocent people coming in as anybody being an organized crime in the beginning.
How you, I think that's a good place to start. What were you doing, and what year was it, and what did you notice that you realized something was going on initially?
Well, it was very confusing, and it was clear back in the late 1980s to 1991, and it started with some issues that will probably be, extremely confusing, because the organizations that were involved are not more known as biker gangs, and in fact, they are international organized crime. And I would think, that people mainly think of them as biker clubs, but they're international. They're very strong with a lot of numbers of people, and a lot of them, a great percentage, do not even wear biker attire. Citizens don't realize that. They're a very secretive organization. They call them one percenters. The two groups involved with me are known as the Hells Angels and also the Mongols MC. And I think the prior one mentioned is probably one of the stronger in the world that is obviously known, and federal authorities are involved with these folks. So wherever basically they are operating, you're going to have federal authorities there also, in the midst somewhere, because there are just a number of crimes that they're associated with. Now, I was not a member, or I wasn't involved with them whatsoever. It was a situation where I moved, accepted an engineering position in Long Beach, California, and I arrived there in the late 80s, and starting in 1991, I fell into a superior court process that was a very long situation indeed, and that's where I learned that, just prior to that, I had been targeted by these groups. I like to say more connections of these groups that are interrelated with these groups. And it was just some confusion that they didn't know who I was. And the last thing in the world, though, I want people to think is I have, any type of membership or any type of, dealings with these people. They just knew me. And I was at business establishments where they were also, and that's basically how it happened, and maybe some of the confusion. They can be very paranoid people due to their criminal business. So I think I didn't maybe appear to them as them. They didn't know me, and there weren't any identifications, at that time that were worn, no what they call colors or, significations on clothing or anything like that until much later on. And so the superior court process was a long process. Prior to it, I was targeted, and I didn't have any, like most targeted individuals, they do not have any idea, what it is. They just know that if something is not is hitting them that doesn't feel normal. In some cases, it doesn't look normal because you can have, an audible as well as a visual field, and I happen to have both at the time. And
Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Welcome to the Tuesday Night's Triumph Over Targeting podcast. I'm your moderator, Ella. And tonight we have a very interesting guest again. He was recommended by Mike Mason, and he's a longtime TI. First off, if you were new to the call, please stay on, and we will get you some support, some additional TalkShoe podcast numbers, and some helpful links and websites. This is a solution and educational-based podcast, but the views and opinions of my guests are not necessarily my own personal views and opinions. My goal is that everyone can obtain something out of tonight, especially a feeling of empowerment. If you have any suggestions, comments, questions, especially if you are in need of additional support, please don't hesitate to email me at tiangel2016@gmail.com. Again, that's tiangel2016@gmail.com. So, Robert, I want to say thank you for coming on and being willing to share your testimony and your story.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Okay. You were spoken of very highly by a few people. So, again, I'm just happy that you were able to come. Can you give a little bit of your background, maybe, if you'd like to, like where you grew up and, what your career interest has been and different things like that, if you want to share that before we get into the actual targeting?
Sure. I'm a mechanical engineer. I was born in Topeka, Kansas, and I'm an elderly gentleman. I've been in this business. I call it a rotten business, if you will, for about 30 years. So there isn't much that I haven't been through, or probably most individuals I've probably heard about. I love sports. I'm a veteran in Special Ops Operations, United States Army, retired, and so I'm familiar with directed energy weapons with the Department of Defense, as well as the abused, targeted individuals, such as I think is online here. I am one myself, and I have been one for years. And I'm willing to share my story if I can help. There isn't much that I haven't been through with these issues. Some TIs may disagree with my targeting situation because mine happen to be perpetrators of organized crime connections, and I can explain that. I don't want to do all the talking. I don't know how you conduct your shows, but I would be glad to explain it all and what has happened to me and how it happened. And in my case, they are identified, and I can mention who it is, as well as I do have a website report that I think most folks have been on. I don't know if you want me to identify it on the air or not.
Please do. We will go, because we have plenty of time, so we can go to an in-depth discussion about you and your targeting and maybe some of the solutions and what you do to kind of get through this. And I'd love to hear about your website. So we can go in any order that you want. If you want to get into your website, that's good. But maybe we should talk about, I'd like to hear a little bit more about your military involvement. And you obviously already know about these directed energy weapons. So what did you know about them while you were in the military?
Basically, that they are basically used for our protection, not against it. They aren't. A lot of people have the misconception that the Department of Defense uses them against innocent citizens, and that has not been my experience at all. It's mainly used for intended to be used for our securities, and the United States Department of Defense, and as well as the agencies such as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, whom I personally have stayed in contact with for years. They know me personally, and I've had several personal meetings with them, as well as phone conversation follow-ups. However, I don't agree with them, as Dr. Robert Duncan and a lot of others do not either, and that's why we're all trying to help, because they mainly, they don't want to get involved and involve themselves and wrongly, or also I guess conduct information to us that they claim to be against the different regulations and different different issues as far as security issues. Mainly, it enters into very high securities on behalf of the various securities of our country, and so that's the main reason they claim. Although I don't think that that's obviously it isn't correct to leave individuals out here, innocent citizens that are abused by directed energy frequency abuse. I don't understand it, and it's something that I think that we're just all trying to expose a little bit, a lot more than we're most all of us are having luck. Although we're in the most awareness that we've been in in our history, so it is getting there. It's just a matter of a little more time and a little bit more publications. That's the purpose of my website report that I've been working on for years, and I think that proper publications about this for teaching people universally what this has done to people, what it is doing lawlessly, is the best course of action, and it also exposes the agencies for not assisting us, and therefore I think they're coming around a little bit more to the positive, and hopefully will be assisting us in the future. Hopefully, here close by. I know that a lot of our cases are monitored by them. You may not know it, but that is occurring. So they're trying, I think, the best that they can, but they have a lot of people that are undercover. They have a lot of issues at stake, and so it's a very hard topic to really try to reason with people on their behalf. So I don't want to try to sound like I'm doing that either, because I have a high disagreement with the way that hundreds of people are left out here that are victims and that are suffering every day and night, and also involving their families. So I'm working very hard on everybody's behalf also, and my own case, there hasn't anything I don't think I haven't been through, and it's kind of a living hell, if you will, and there's a lot of abuse going on that I try to deal with, typical of others, and so we're just all doing the best that we can.
Well, can we start back, like when you first got targeted?